you hear the stories about how these sort of want to kill you. The Dodge Viper is the embodiment of the statement, there is no replacement for displacement. While the world was busy downsizing engines, losing cylinders, turbocharging and supercharging, Dodge always kept the massive naturally aspirated V10. How massive is it? Well, it's a 8.4 liter V10. For comparison, the Bugatti Veyron's W16 was only 8 liters. Another point of comparison, the Lamborghini Huracan and Audi R8 V10 is only 5.2 liters, so you can see how massive an 8.4 liter V10 is. This car right here is the Gen 4 Viper ACR. ACR stands for American Club Racer, and it's the hardcore track version. It's street legal, but just barely. Designed to take you to the track, absolutely dominate there, and then drive back home. And today, we're going to take this 2008 Viper ACR for a drive. The powertrain, that 8.4 liter naturally aspirated V10 for this generation made 600 horsepower and 560 pound-feet of torque, rear-wheel drive only, 6-speed manual transmission, weighing in at just 3,400 pounds. This is a hardcore track beast. In terms of exterior styling, the Dodge Viper is iconic among American sports cars. You have that tremendously long hood with the V10 up front, and as an ACR, there's lots of visual cues that differentiate this from the regular Viper. So, obviously, the aero package. We have the huge carbon fiber rear wing out back that's adjustable. We have the fanged carbon fiber front splitter, which is designed to emulate the fangs of a snake. We have the carbon fiber front canards, and when you fill in the optional track splitter, that aero package produces 1,000 pounds of downforce at 150 miles an hour, which is substantially more than the non-ACR version. This vented hood, I can see right through to the engine. This one's finished in this really cool black and red two-tone finish with the off-center red stripe. We've got 18-inch forged wheels up front, 19-inch out back. The fronts are wrapped in 295 section tires. The rears are 345s. Fog lamp delete up front for the ACR. A couple of my other favorite Viper touches are the side exit exhaust and the rear tail lamp, the brake light that looks like the Viper logo. This thing just looks so absolutely menacing on the road. It is a beast. With that, let's hop inside, take it for a drive, talk about the interior, what it's like to drive, and lastly, the value. All right, let's go for a drive. So the interior, even for this era, was not the best, not one of the highlights of the Viper. They definitely spent all of the money on the engine, the suspension, engineering this thing to drive. Whew. So yeah, it's pretty basic. It's a lot of plastic. The ergonomics are borderline hilariously not so great, especially if you're taller. I got it, I was like, whoa, okay, I feel like I barely fit at 6'3". The pedal placement is very close and almost like weirdly off center. The steering wheel dominates pretty much the entire driver area. I've got these gauges and everything. We have this big red ACR special stripe here on the steering wheel, but you don't buy this car for luxury interior perks. You buy it for the V10, the way it drives, and the way it feels. So we're on some nice curvy road out here, outside of Scottsdale, Arizona. Let's see what this thing is like. It took a bit for me to get comfortable with the clutch, the shifter, and everything. naturally aspirated V10 rear-wheel drive manual. That's a good combination. There are not many of those in the world at all. Not at all. The seats are very tight, firm to hold you in. There's not much space. This is a hilariously useless cup holder, like probably the most useless cup holder in the history of cup holders. It's like 2 inches deep, and if you put something there, you can't shift, right? The shifter's right here, you're gonna knock it over. But who cares, right? Who cares? Everything is up to temp. I've been driving this for about an hour, getting used to everything. One thing I noticed is the shifter, the gates are slightly at an angle, so it's not like the direct up and down. So it took me a little bit to get used to that, knowing exactly what gear I was supposed to be in. It's got a pretty heavy clutch. And you can feel the inertia of that massive V10. Like when you're blipping the throttle for downshifts, you gotta give it a nice little kick to make sure it revs up. It's not a very high revving engine. Just over 6,000 RPM is the red line, simply just because of the sheer size of everything in that rotating assembly, I'm sure. Visibility is decent, right? It's very narrow, window out. If I sit up all the way straight, like my sight line is pretty much level with the top of the windshield, but it's just part of the whole experience. So what is driving this thing like? Oh, I see some little speckles of rain. I'm on R888s. This is not on the factory Michelin Cup tires. I think R888s are even more aggressive, so we'll take it easy if it gets a little damp out. We have adjustable KW suspension, which allows you to change the damping and the ride height without taking the tires off. Again, track setup. We're currently in just the regular road ride height, but still taking it easy because of that overhang up front. Don't want to scrape this car. Let's see, windshield wipers work. That's good. And weight is the enemy of track cars, right? So they took the ACR, they did some measures to remove weight. So 40 pounds lighter than the regular Viper, but you could get this hardcore package, which would delete the speakers, the under hood sound dampening, the tire inflator kit, and do a couple other little things that would make it a 40 pounds additional lighter, so more hardcore. They also said when this thing came out that the combination of the forged wheels and the tires and everything, you lose 60 pounds of unsprung weight, and unsprung weight is even more of an input in terms of how the car handles, steers, and things like that because of the rotating forces. So that's, again, more and more hardcore. They didn't up the power, right? It didn't need it. The formula has always been just more aero, bit more lightweight, harder core everything. It is actually raining right now, and I'm in a Viper ACR on R888. So hopefully we can outrun this little bit of a rain cloud over here. Great, of all days, we're in the desert. It's Arizona. It rained yesterday. I was supposed to drive this yesterday, and we had a torrential thunderstorm. And this car is pre all the electronic aids, right? Like the fancy stability controls and traction controls and all those electronic toys. This is before that, so you gotta be careful. You gotta respect this car. It is raw and hardcore. Oh, it is properly raining right now. It's sunny over there. What the heck? We also have a Tremec 6-speed manual. There was never an automatic transmission available for the Viper. It was just designed for the hardcore enthusiasts. You had to really know what you wanted if you were buying one of these cars. The brakes were upgraded too to StopTech 2-piece lightweight slotted rotors for better track performance capability. The driving experience is also just so unique. The hood just keeps going. I love the off-center red stripe. It lines up perfectly with the stripe here on the steering wheel, and it continues across the hood forward. You see those vents. The hood just keeps going. Out back, I can see the two posts for the wing. The wing actually doesn't interfere with your rear visibility. You know, sometimes carbon rear wings, like on my Shelby 350R, it just blocked probably half the rear windshield. This one, visibility is not bad, and I also love seeing out the side view mirrors. You see the end plates on the big wing out back too. I gotta be careful. The roads are actually wet now, and if you've driven on R888s, you know those are very aggressive tires, and this doesn't have traction control, so be careful in Vipers. Second gear. once you get used to the shifter and the clutch feel, it is a very, very satisfying car to drive. It requires like deliberate inputs and everything. And when you get it right, it is rewarding. And it is raw and analog. Some new cars, like especially like the track focused ones, you can say they're raw feeling, but they're by today's refined standards. This is a whole different era. Just good old fashioned analog sports car, massive engine, massive power, massive torque, aero and downforce. I can see the plume of spray behind me. Oh my gosh, that is like visualizing aerodynamics. Holy crap. This is not quite as aggressive as like the Gen 5 Viper ACR Extreme, but similarly, like that car, apparently people who were towing them could see noticeably the like fuel economy dropping. The drag coefficient is absurd on these huge winged ACRs, where like top speed noticeably drops and everything. It's just all in the sake of downforce. Back when this car came out, it ran a, I believe, 7-minute, 12-second Nürburgring time, which is pretty impressive. Again, without the latest fancy aids. You look at some of these newer supercars, right? They've got all this crazy variable stage traction control, stability control, variable drift control, fancy dampers, and all these different things. This old-fashioned Viper does not have that. I'm very excited to get in the car with my friend Max, the owner of this, and ask him all the questions on what it's been like to own a Gen 4 Viper ACR. He's like, this is the most raw and analog car experience where you feel one with the machine, and I could see that. Woohoo! Third gear. All the roads are now a bit damp. It was dry when I was going in that way. You gotta respect this thing. Woohoo! This is like the polar opposite end of the sports car experience from maybe like a Porsche GT3, my Z06, my Shelby 350R. Like, because this is a low revving, just big displacement motor. Those I'm used to, like the higher revving, right? I personally really love super high revving engines. Look at my 350R, the Z06, the R8. I love it when you can feel 9,000 RPM. This is not that whatsoever. It's a very different experience. Let's talk about the value. So when the Viper ACR was new, the Gen 4 ACR started at under $100,000, $98,000 for one of these. It was about a $12,000 increase versus the non-ACR version, but honestly, I think it was worth it if you wanted to track the car because of that aero, the more aggressive setup, the suspension, tires, brakes, and so forth, and the specialness factor, right? The ACR is always going to be a bit more rare than the regular Viper. Now we're talking, this is what, 15 years old now, 15 years later. How much are Gen 4 Viper ACRs trading for? Well, actually, couldn't find that many. I don't think there were any for sale, maybe one for sale. I saw some old listings and obviously a lot of regular Gen 4 Vipers. Those seem to be in the 50s range if you have more miles, and then 70s to 90s depending on the lower mile, cleaner, more desirable specs. These seem to be trading for the low hundreds range if you want a really, really nice one. Now, there were some with miles. There was a 10,000 mile one that was that was like 96 grand. There was one that had 18,000 miles on it that sold for $76,000. I've got all these numbers in my head and I'm mixing them up. There was a 230 mile one that sold for $155,000. This one is a driver car. It's got almost 40,000 miles. At 39,000 miles has been driven and enjoyed. So I imagine the price point would be much more reasonable if you're looking for one like this with miles that you can drive and not worry about. Oh my gosh, the spray out back is absolutely crazy. You don't have exhaust pipes routing back there, right? So it's just the diffuser. The exhaust pipes kick out of the side, and it's got that warning label. You gotta be careful. Really wide sill. Don't burn yourself getting in. What was this competing with when it was new? The C6 ZR1. That was Corvette's highest performance version. They had a supercharged V8, but this feels more brutal than even a C6 ZR1. Just that massive V10. ZR1 values have done also quite well, just as these ACR values, but I feel like there are way more C6 ZR1s for sale. It's rare that I see like Viper ACRs overall, so I believe the production numbers must have skewed towards the Corvette. Maybe this was just too hardcore for people at the era. What else would this compete with? Well, at the time, the Europeans had something like the Ferrari F430 Scuderia, the Porsche 997 GT2. We're talking cars double, triple, sometimes quadruple the price point, and this had more power. This had the track performance. It was hardcore. It didn't have maybe some of the other nicer fancy materials and a nice interior and some of the brand elements that the European cars had, but this was the frickin' Viper. We stuck a giant 8.4 liter V10 in a sports car, and it might want to kill you, but it'll be fun while it happens. It feels like I'm driving a freight train. Jeez. It is also quite firm. I mean, track focus dampers, but you feel all the bumps. You feel everything. It's communicating it to you. I don't know if I'd want to do a long road trip in this car, but for short blasts around town and then finding some curvy canyon roads, wow. The owner of Max was absolutely right. This is the raw analog experience. Roll the windows down for a little bit. The noise is just right here. Oh, side exhausts are awesome. I used to have a car with side exhaust. My Boss 302 Laguna Seca had side exhaust pipes. It was always so much fun when you're going through like a tunnel or a bridge or an underpass and you hear it echo off the walls. It was such a cool part of the experience. That is signature for the Viper. Some final thoughts on the Gen 4 Viper ACR. Any sports car that puts this stupid big grin on your face is a good one, because that's what this experience should be about. This is an old era of man and machine, the analog raw connection. New cars can't match this anymore because of all the new regulations and technology and creature comforts they have to put in them. Even something by today's standards like a Huracan STO that is pretty raw and hardcore, this is a different level. It doesn't feel like a Super Trofeo race car like the Huracan does, or like a GT4 RS is like a track scalpel. This feels like a hammer designed to just smash everything, right? But it's so rewarding. It's a car that once you get the hang of it, you feel like you accomplished something, you conquered something, because it doesn't have all the fancy driver aids and stuff. It's a good old-fashioned 6-speed manual, rear-wheel drive, your right foot, your skills, massive engine. You gotta respect the car, but when you get it and you have fun with it, yeah, you have to respect it. I've been very, very cautious, especially because apparently I pissed off Mother Nature and she decided to rain on me when I had a freaking Viper ACR to drive. Like, why? So, damp roads, slick tires, a lot of power and torque. You gotta be careful. Wow, what an experience. Hope you guys enjoyed my review of the Gen 4 Viper ACR. Make sure you check out the ownership perspective video with Max. I'm sure he'll share some very, very cool insights on what it's been like. Thanks for watching.